guys, and welcome to the Unfiltered Podcast. I cannot believe we're here once again. Um, Little quick update: we're gonna start doing something new on the podcast. So instead of me just talking and running my big mouth every time, I'm gonna start inviting people as guests on the podcast. I'm super excited about today's guest. Her name is Reagan, and we have been friends ever since we were little. I think we met when we were like 5 years old, and we're going to be talking about relationship 101. So, whether you are in a relationship currently, um, whether you desire to be in a relationship, or whether you just got over or are trying to get over a really bad relationship, this podcast is for you. So, I think she just joined. Try to invite her in here. Hello, can you hear me?
Hey,
So good
how
to
are
see you.
you?
So this is my friend Reagan, and she is absolutely beautiful, and she has such a heart for Jesus, and I love her so much. And I was just telling you guys, like I was just telling everybody that we've literally been friends since we were 5 years old, and now we're both 19, and I think that is so crazy.
Oh my gosh, it is because I was thinking about it. Like, you have so many friends who, you'll like play dolls with them when you're little, and a lot of people outgrow each other. And I just think it's really
Yes.
cool that, like, through the years, instead of outgrowing each other, I feel like we've grown together to the point where now we're 19. And if there's a problem, we just like call each other and we're like, hey, like, here's what's
Yes.
going on in my life. And I just think that's
Oh my
amazing.
gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I love you so much as a friend, and I'm so excited. You're literally the first guest on this podcast, and
I'm
I
so
can't believe that.
honored.
I couldn't be more happier if that's even a word. But I just want you to start off by introducing yourself. Tell everybody who you are, and your interests, your hobbies. Kind of go from there.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Reagan. I am 19. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, so we're a little bit far away
Yay.
from each other. I'm a yoga instructor, so I actually teach Christian-based yoga, so it's kind of cool because it's not like
Okay.
connect with your oneness and Mother Nature. It's like how can we meditate on scripture and stuff like that.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yes. And then I'm a college student, so I kind of get the opportunity to sort of see what other people are going through in this phase of life and just
Right.
kind of the differences of what people are going through. So,
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, I just think you are such an amazing person. And I'm so excited about our topic today. It's relationship 101, and I was actually struggling with what to call it. I was like, should I call it,
mhm.
healing from a broken relationship, thriving in the relationships you were in? Like, what should I
Mhm.
call it? And I was like, no sweat. I'm just going to do a general like title. But
I like it.
I have a lot of questions for you, and I'm super excited to hear your answers.
Okay.
When you talk about relationships, I know, you've been in relationships before. I've been in relationships before. Honestly, no matter what age you're at, you've been in some sort of relationship,
Mhm.
whether it be boyfriend, girlfriend, or friendship. So I think discernment is a huge thing that plays into relationships. And I just would love to hear your take on discernment. If you're, maybe you're younger and you're like, okay, I'm trying to be discerning about getting into my first relationship. Or maybe you're actually in a current relationship that's a super unhealthy for you. And you're like, okay, what are red flags? How do I know when I need to move on? Or maybe you're trying to discern in finding yourself after a broken relationship. And I feel like those three stages are really what I want to hit on. And if you just have any wisdom as far as discernment in relationships, I mean, just go ahead, have at it.
Okay, well, I would say like the number one thing is I've definitely been in situations where, it was a tough relationship or something had happened. And even when you lose that or you're going through a hard time, I think one of my like favorite things, it's not a good situation, but one of the things that I always do take out of it is the wisdom that I get from the people around me. Because I'm 19, I don't know that much, but there are so many things that people have said to me
Right.
that have just like stuck with me. And I remember like one like quote or saying that I heard that just hit me was it was the bait that you catch them with is the bait that you keep them with. And I remember hearing
Mm,
that and going, "Oh man, like that one makes sense because so many people you just kind of get drawn into a crowd, whoever you are, wherever you are. And when you think about it, yeah, like if you're out like at a party drinking somewhere and you meet a guy there and you're like, oh my gosh, he's so great. You kind of have to think like, how did I meet this person? You know, what's
Yep.
going on? I know a lot of Christians growing up weren't allowed to date, right? Like their parents
Mhm.
were like, absolutely not. You cannot date. And so they would have to find people who would sneak around with them. And
Yep.
there's like no worse way, I feel like, to get into a relationship. It's like
Yes.
you have to be willing to lie in order to be with me. And I think
Yep.
that, you know, things like that, it just kind of really speaks to how it starts, like what's going on. Is
Mhm.
there kind of drama that led into it? Is there that rebellion that's leading into it? And I
Right.
think that's just like a big thing that kind of has been on my mind going into a relationship, or whether that's a friendship or a romantic relationship, is like, how am I meeting these people? Like, how am I
Mhm.
getting to know them? Are we like, what are we bonding over? Are we bonding over, you know,
Right.
our love for the Lord and church? Are we bonding over like a hobby that we really care about? Or are we bonding over gossiping about somebody, you know, and just kind of stuff like that,
Mhm.
I feel like is just sort of a big indicator of what you're getting yourself into. And a lot of times it doesn't hit you until later on when you go back and
Oh
you're like,
yeah.
oh, that's how that started.
Right. Exactly. I think that's such good advice. The bait you catch them with is the bait you keep them with. And it's so true. Like in relationships, like even for me that have ended, I'm like, oh crap, like why did that end? Like, was it me? Did I say
Mm-hmm.
something? Did I do something? But I think, we tend to even like put on airs when we're in a relationship at first that we really want to keep or desire to keep. I know in past relationships, even just friendships, I tend to do the things that make that person happy or the things that it's not me, but I'm doing it just so I can please them and seem good to them. And
Mm-hmm.
then you get months down the road and you're like, okay, I can't keep this up. I'm going to have to be myself. And it just gets to a point where like it ends up breaking because you never were yourself in the first place. And I feel like we kind of hurt ourselves when we do that. And I know that's, just for me, it's just experience, just being yourself and always, you know, being discerning, even, in relationships that you are in currently. You have to be yourself and even just praying, like, God, is this a relationship that you want me to keep? And if so, how do I show you or um how do I exemplify your characteristics in this relationship is so important. So
No, I totally agree with that.
yes, absolutely. And so I know that you have been through relationships before and strong relationships, not so great relationships. What would you say to the girl who had never been in a relationship before and she's just really, really hungry for that attention, for that,
Mm-hmm.
I think attention is like the main thing for that, connection with another person. And she's really eager to get into a relationship, but she's just really confused. Like, where is Mr. Right? Why can't I find him? What would be your advice to that girl?
Gosh, you know, I'm still kind of learning all that myself, but I will say I know that we live in a society where you're pretty much taught from a young age, like, you know, the whole saying, like, fake it till you make it. Like, if you want to be
Oh,
liked,
yeah.
you have to be a certain way. You have to dress a certain way,
Hmm.
talk a certain way. If you want to get likes on Instagram, you have to, you know, post certain pictures. And so it's kind of ingrained in our
Hmm.
mind from the time that we're young. Like, you have to kind of conform to what the world wants to be liked and to be accepted. Um, and honestly, a lot of people say like, oh, when you stop like looking for love, it'll come to you. But I have
Hmm.
not realized until now like how genuinely important it is to be solid in a relationship with God and solid in a relationship with yourself.
Yes.
Because as long as you feel like you need a relationship, it kind of it like goes
Hmm.
back to why. Like, why do you need validation from somebody else? Why do you need approval
Right.
from someone else? Why do you need to feel love from a person, like a physical person in this world, in order to feel worth something, rather than knowing that your
Hmm.
worth and your identity is in God? And that's what we've been taught, is if
Oh,
you
yeah.
want to be worthy or if you want to be valued, you're putting it in the hands of other people. And that's
Mhm.
such a slippery slope, because I mean, the world is it's full of sin, it's full of imperfect people. And there's not really there, you can't please everyone all the time. It's just
Yep.
impossible. And I think it's just this rabbit hole that can just keep going and going and going, of
Mhm.
chasing, one crowd wants you to act this way and one crowd wants you to act this way. And kind of
Exactly.
chasing something that's impossible.
Right. I absolutely agree. And, I think that is where the discernment comes in, is like, why
Yeah.
am I needing this validation? And I feel like, also for the young girl who is so eager to be loved by Jesus is more than you will ever be loved by anyone. That is
Hmm.
perfect love. And
Yeah.
it's so amazing to me that we have the ability to be loved perfectly, because no matter who loves you on this earth, like I'm in a relationship now, and my boyfriend's name is Jared, and I know that he loves me with everything that he has in him, but and I love him the same way, but I will never love him perfectly.
Hmm.
I will always screw up. I will always mess up in that relationship. With my friends, I know, like with Reagan, I will never be able to be the perfect friend to her, because I, I don't have that ability. But to be loved perfectly by Jesus, we search so much for imperfect love, when perfect love is like knocking down our door, like, like, hi, I'm here, like I'm everything. And Jesus is, calling us, I'm everything that you ever need for fulfillment in life. But, I think that relationships are so important, and we do need relationships to thrive on this earth. And I believe that, finding the right ones and being discerning, like you said, in that way is so important as we build our relationships. And, even, okay, going to like, okay, maybe there's a girl who is in a relationship currently and she's maybe seeing red flags. Can you just give me a little bit of your, advice, your experience on red flags? And if you're in a relationship right now that's really hindering you as a person, how to know the signs of when to break it off and say, okay, I have to leave this.
Yeah, I would say that for sure every relationship is so different. Every person that you're with is so different. It could just be that that is just not the person that God has for you, or it could be that that's like a
Hmm.
really toxic person who probably shouldn't be in a relationship with anybody. But I do
Right.
think, when you come back to that mindset of like, I need to feel wanted, I need to feel needed, that is when you are most like susceptible to overlooking those red flags, because
Hmm.
you'll get in this mental spiral of, oh, they did that and it wasn't okay, but then you'll justify it because you don't want to lose them, and you don't want to lose that
Yes.
validation, you don't want to lose that gratification that you get from being with somebody who cares about you and who makes you feel special.
Yeah.
um, and I would say that probably one of the things I notice is when it tends to go really fast. When it goes
Hmm.
really, really fast, it's, oh my gosh, they love me. Oh my gosh, I'm getting all this adrenaline. I'm getting so excited and I'm so valued
Right.
and appreciated. And then the more time goes on, that starts to sort of fizzle out. When you jump into something,
Hmm.
it tends to fizzle out rather than kind of slowly working your way towards something and letting that love build. You see all these 13-year-olds
Hmm.
who have been dating someone for 2 weeks and they're like, oh my gosh, I love you, because they're so excited and
Yes.
they feel so like
Yes.
validated and gratified for it. But like the
Right.
ones that I feel like last, like when I think of even the friendships that I last, because those are some of the best relationships I have, like, have you ever thought about, you meet those friends, you're like, oh my gosh, you're so fun. Let's go hang out. Let's go get coffee. Let's go do
Yep.
this. And then before you know it,
Yes.
they found somebody new who's fun and exciting, and
Right.
versus the
Exactly.
friends who like are there for you. And maybe it doesn't start out like really close. Like all the people in my life who were genuinely
Mhm.
close, it didn't start out like some dramatic fairy
Oh,
tale
yeah.
Hallmark movie. It's like we met, we were pretty
Right.
close, and over the years it just builds and builds and builds and
Grew.
grows. And
Right.
I would say that
Exactly.
that's probably something, like the mindset that you're in going into a relationship is really important, because I love cliches because they're cliches for a reason. And
Right.
like, everybody says, oh, you can only control yourself. You can't change anybody else's actions. And
Mhm.
you only have control over what you do. But so often we want to make somebody like us. We want to make somebody
Mhm.
stay. We want to make them change their minds. But until you realize that you're the only person you can control, if somebody else's
Right.
behavior is bad, like that's not on you. You can't make them change that, but you do have the authority to leave because you do have
Right.
control over your own life. And that's pretty much the only
Exactly.
thing that you have power over. So if you're looking for something from someone, I can guarantee
Mhm.
you you're not going to find it. And if you do for a minute, it's not going to last.
Oh yeah, absolutely 100%. I think that, like you said, just the need for that validation is so what gets you so, head first, so deep, so fast. And then you're
Mhm.
like, oh crap, I can't get out of this.
Mhm.
Um, so for the person who has maybe broken off a bad relationship or just gone through a really bad relationship, I know it's hard. And I have actually several friends right now who are struggling with that. And just it's a time where you need everyone to rally around you and be so encouraging. But it's often a time where nobody's there and nobody shows up and nobody's there for you. And I know we've even talked about this. So, what would be your word of encouragement for someone going through a situation like that?
It's I mean, it's a really, really tough situation to be in, no matter like who you are. People want love, people want support. And I think one thing that's really important again is like you want validation from that relationship, but it also extends to those friendships. Like a lot of times if you
Mhm.
feel like you've been wronged, you want to be able to go to your friends and tell them how angry you are, how upset you are, and for them to be like,
Right.
you're right, like girl, you didn't deserve
Yes.
that, like screw whoever. um
Right.
and and a lot of times that doesn't happen, and a lot of times
Mhm.
something I've noticed is there are a lot of people who aren't necessarily there for you. They're there for what's
Mhm.
convenient. They don't want to hear the truth.
Right.
They want to hear what's easy.
Mhm.
And everybody, another thing that people say all the time is like, oh, if somebody doesn't care about you, then you should just stop caring about them. And if somebody doesn't want to hang
Yep.
out with you, then you should stop wanting to hang out with them. That is
Yes.
so much easier said than done. Like, if you care
Yes,
about
it is.
someone as a friend, if you think that they're there for you, if you think that they're going to support you and they don't, it's going to take
Mhm.
time. It's going to take a minute. And
Yep.
one thing that I will say is like, because everyone's like, oh, just stop caring. You are
Mhm.
allowed to grieve. You're allowed to be angry. Does that mean you act on that
Exactly.
anger? No. Does that mean you go post nasty things about them or start blocking them on everything or saying bad stuff about them to anyone who will listen because you still want that validation? No, but you
Yes.
do get to, you can be angry. You can say like I'm hurt, and you can take that time to grieve because there are so many people
Mhm.
who like want to, those people who want to be like thriving and they're like, we're not
Yes.
together anymore and I'm so happy and I just need everybody to know how happy I am, and I am just
Yes.
literally the happiest I've ever been. Meanwhile they're probably
My gosh.
dying inside, and it's like, girl, you're
Right,
not
right.
happy. Like,
Right. And
you
that's
don't have
okay,
to be, yeah, like you don't have to be okay. It's okay not to be
Mhm.
okay. And again, we live in this
Mhm.
world of like social media. That doesn't mean post on your Instagram and
Oh
be like,
yeah.
"Oh, I'm so sad. Here's a picture of me crying on my story." That's not
I
what that
know.
means. But if you need to be not okay, maybe step back from that. Maybe don't post that you're
Mhm.
crying. Maybe don't post, "OMG, look at me. I'm so happy." Maybe just step
Mhm.
back and be sad for a minute and be hurt for a minute
Right.
and take that time
Mhm.
to grieve those relationships, because when there's that void, when we feel like we've lost something, so many people want to jump into something else so that they can fill that void and so that they can feel
Right,
that
exactly.
validation again. um,
Mhm.
and when you take that time by yourself, when you take that time to grieve and you take that time to heal, there's not a void that needs to be filled anymore. When you take that time with God and you kind of
Mm.
really get that opportunity to put your identity in Him and to realize, like, I am who I
Yes.
am because of you and not because of anybody else, then by the time that you're ready for new friendships or new relationships, you're not looking for them. You're not looking for something to fill a
Exactly.
void, and they'll come. They will. And those are going to be the friends
Mm.
that matter. And those are going to be the friends that stick around, because say you meet somebody
Oh
who
yeah.
seems really fun and really flashy, that's not what you're looking for anymore. You're
Hmm.
looking for the people who care, and you're looking for the people who show up. And one thing that my mom always says that like it's just again, it sticks with me, as she says, when you go through something
Yes.
hard, you can either let it make you bitter or better. And there are
That's
so many
so good.
people who hold on to that bitterness and they stay
Mm.
angry. And I remember being in situations where I was like, I do not want to be bitter. I don't want to hold on to
Mm.
that bitterness, because so many
Oh yeah.
people can say like, I'm over it, but they're still angry, or, oh,
Hmm.
I'm over it, but they're
Yep.
still trying to prove how happy they are. Um,
Yes. Oh
and
my
I
gosh.
think that the actual representation is when it doesn't affect you anymore. Like, not just that it
Hmm.
doesn't make you sad, not that you don't just miss those friends or that relationship, but when you get to a point where it doesn't make you angry either. You're not trying to prove how happy you are,
Yeah.
you're not trying to prove how over it you are, but when you're just like, okay, that sucked, but
Right.
here's where I am now.
Let's move on. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is, just truly like finding contentment. And so
Mhm.
many times, you move on. I was talking to my mom about this. We went on a little weekend getaway trip, and we had, 4 hours in the car there and back to chat. And I love chatting with my mom, but we were talking about being brokenhearted.
Mhm.
And my mom is like, the easiest way to get over a broken heart is to jump to the next best thing, whatever's like the next, oh, well, this is so great,
Mhm.
or oh, this is so much better. I'm going to go get my mind off of this by doing this.
Mhm.
And she's like, you never heal. You just put band-aids. It's just like,
Mhm.
oh, band-aid, band-aid. I'm not even looking
Mhm.
at that. And she was just like, the truest way to heal a broken heart is to heal. You have to cry. You have to be angry. You have to wrestle with yourself in a way. And even at some points, wrestle with God in a way of like, God, why? Asking those questions, being,
Mhm.
truly broken and then learning how to pick up the pieces and put them back together. And I feel like, so many people and even so many of my, um, I would say like acquaintances that I know and I know about their life or I follow them on Instagram or whatever. It's like they leave a relationship, but they move on to the next best thing because that's just so easy. And it's like,
Mhm.
like you said, oh, I'm so happy now. That sucks. That was trash. But now I'm happy, like I'm
Mhm.
truly happy. And when you can tell that they really aren't. And so that's something about the Unfiltered podcast is it's okay to hurt and it's okay to be broken. And this is a place for broken people. And this is a place for hurting people. And, I think something that we really just wanted to share is that you're not alone in the
Mhm.
broken. And you're also not alone in the best day of your life. And you shouldn't let that bitterness grow and shut everyone out. And because in order to heal, you have to have people to help you heal. I really believe that that is a
Mhm.
huge part of healing and growing. But as far as growth goes, say that you have really been broken and you're on the path to healing.
Mhm.
What would you say to that person who's really trying to heal, but they might struggle some days, and some days might be really good, and some days might be really bad? What would you say to that person?
I have somebody, yeah, who always says to me like the only way out is through. So you can't
Mm,
you can't get around it. You can't jump over it. You can't go underneath it. Like, the only way out is through. And I
yes.
would say like the number one like word that's just stuck with me, that's something I always try and hold on to, is hope.
Mm,
Because when you're in a bad situation or when you're frustrated, sometimes it feels like there's no end. And sometimes it feels
right.
like there's no way out because you're in it. And I would say be in it. Don't wallow there. Don't, like sit there forever and
Yeah,
say, oh, it's going to
exactly.
be awful forever. But when I have a hard day, I'm like,
Mhm,
I'm going to have a hard day. I'm going to let myself be sad, but I'm not going to stay here forever, because I know that at some point it's going to get better. And sometimes it takes a long
mhm,
time. And sometimes it's a really
right.
slow process, but I genuinely do believe that pain really, really does make you stronger, and that there is a reason for that. You know, you even hear about like people give that analogy of trees, and the more that the wind blows them, the stronger those roots become and the more grounded they
Yes.
are. And then the next time a storm comes, it's a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger. And when you go through
Mm-hmm.
those moments, like it is something that will continue to make you stronger than if you just
Mm-hmm.
ignore it or try to just pretend
Oh
it
yeah.
never happened. Like, and we live in a world
Right.
again where you're supposed to look happy all of the time. You're supposed to look
Yes.
perfect all of the time. You're supposed to look
Mm-hmm.
successful and cool all of the time, and it feels, I guess, maybe just really unauthentic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that authenticity is something that is so important, um,
Yes.
because you'll meet those people who are willing to say, like, yeah, I've been hurt. Like, yeah, I'm hurting right now, but it's gonna get better.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are like, my life is perfect all the time, that's not really helpful. You know, and you don't
Nope,
want to be
it's
that
not.
person for somebody else. You don't want to be the person who's also going through pain and is continuing to put on the image that your life is
Mm-hmm.
perfect, because the more we do that, the more isolated and lonely more and more and more people
Mm.
tend to feel.
So true.
um
Oh my gosh,
but I
yes.
do remember, I remember one thing that my nana always says to me. See, it's like my mom, my
Oh,
nana, my parents,
I love
but
it. I
she,
love it.
because like these are the people I learned from. These are the people who
Yes.
like make me better. But she tells
Yes.
this story about a farmer who had an apple tree that blew over in a storm. And she said, "What did he do? He took the fruit and burned the rest." You know, and I just
Mm-hmm.
really like that analogy, because in any situation, you take what you've learned. If you get hurt,
Yep.
now you know. Like another thing that my parents always say is they say, fail fast, fail often, right? So if you're
Mm-hmm.
in a
Yep.
situation where you feel like you've failed, instead of thinking as failure as a step away from success, it's a step
Mm-hmm.
towards success, because without failure you never
Yes.
reach success. So instead of being like, I failed in that relationship, now I'm even worse off than I was, because now you're out of
Mm-hmm.
something that wasn't for you. That's
Yes,
one more
exactly.
relationship or one more friendship that you know wasn't the one. Great, we can check that off the list now. We know that
Yep.
wasn't the person. Take the fruit, take the lessons we've learned, take the hurt we've learned, take, okay, that's a sign. That's a red flag right there. I'm not going to be with somebody who
Mm-hmm.
does that again. I'm not going to entertain friendships with people who act like that again. You take those lessons and you burn the rest. And that's that bitterness and that anger. We don't hold on to that hurt. You
Mm-hmm.
take what you've learned and you
Mm-hmm.
burn the rest. Eventually you still
Yep.
you still take that time
Oh
to
my
grieve and
gosh.
to heal.
Yeah, that analogy is so good. I remember we
Mm-hmm.
were talking the other day on the phone, and Reagan, she was like, take the fruit, burn the rest. And I just stopped. I was like, hold up. That is an amazing example of
Mm-hmm.
life. So many people think,
Mm-hmm.
once you've screwed up and there's no coming back. Whether it's a small thing or whether it's a huge thing maybe in your life, but it really just makes you stronger and it makes you better. And some of the most wise people I know are people who've lived really, really tough lives and people who have really had hard things happen to them and people that the world would say were super unsuccessful because they didn't have a lot of money or they didn't have a lot of this or this or this. But you sit down with them and they are the wisest people you will ever meet because
Mm-hmm.
trials and hardships, like you said, they don't break you. They in turn make you into a better person if you channel that the lessons the right way and you don't let it break you because that choice is really up to you. Like, is it going to break you really, or are you strong enough to pick up the pieces, take the fruit, and move on? You know, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that is the heart of who just understanding like what defines me as a person. And
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about what defines us, um, what would you say to the person who is really struggling with who they are in themselves? How would you say that that person could maybe, learn who they are in Christ? Or what are the steps that have helped you, really figure out, okay, who am I as Reagan? Like who makes Reagan
Mm-hmm.
Reagan? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's a book I've been reading, and it's called You're Not Nothing, That's Okay. And I won't go into the
That's
details,
cute.
but even the title, literally the title in and of itself, I
Yeah.
feel like speaks so much, because it's coming from this Christian perspective where she's saying, you're right, like, we're not strong enough on our own, but you don't have to be.
Yes.
Like, God is.
Yes.
You're not perfect on your own, but He is. And the things that you're not strong enough to do, He is. And the things that you think can never be fixed, He can redeem, and He will. And I think that, I
Yes.
don't know, that's just something that really, really sticks with me, is that, again, we're trying to be so perfect, and we're putting so much pressure on ourselves to be the ones to fix it.
Yep.
We're putting so much pressure on ourselves to, like, find our inner peace and our self-love. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that loving who you are in the sense of what the world wants you to be versus loving who you are as a child of God and who He wants you to be are
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very different things.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think that so many people can go on this really, really long journey of finding themselves and of finding self
Mm-hmm.
love. And if, like, I don't know, like, whatever it is, if, oh, I found myself because I like to go out and go to all these parties, or, ooh, I found
Mm-hmm.
myself and I'm like burning incense and I'm saying meditations and
Yes.
chants and getting in my zen, and now I found myself, because people are so desperate
Right.
for this answer. Like even things like, oh, I dyed all my hair purple and now I found myself because I'm
Right.
my truest self. Like, those are temporary things,
Right.
and those are materialistic things, and they're not going to last, and we're always going to be chasing the next
Mm-hmm.
thing. We're always going to be chasing
Right.
the next trend. If right now it's like high-waisted, like, boyfriend jeans, then we're
Yes.
gonna find that, like, I have found myself, and tomorrow it's gonna be like leg warmers again, like,
Right.
you can't
Exactly.
predict it, and
Exactly.
it's just, again, this endless cycle. Um and finding who you are in Christ, I will say, in this world, can be a little bit of a painful process, because in that process,
Mm-hmm.
He's usually asking you to let go of those worldly
Mm-hmm.
things. And He's asking you
Yep.
to let go of the things that you think are what's supposed to make you cool, or the things that you think are supposed to define you. And I guess, like,
Exactly.
finding that identity in Christ can be really, really, really tough sometimes, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also really cool, because when you stop putting your stock in the things of this world, it's so
Yes.
freeing. It's
Oh, it
so
is.
exhausting to try and
It
do that. And
is.
when you do, like, and it's a process. Like
Mm-hmm.
for me, I don't know that this is necessarily theologically correct. I hope so, but I always, like, say that salvation is the beginning of the process of sanctification. Like, that's the
Oh
way that I
yeah.
think about it, is
Absolutely.
like you're
Yes.
continuing to just be sanctified, and that it's not something where it's like, I was dead, like, boom, I'm amazing and I'm perfect and I'm just like Jesus. Like,
Right.
yes, like, God sees you as
Yep.
perfect and through Jesus, but every single day of your life you're still growing. And the person
Exactly.
who was homeless living on the street who just became a Christian is no better than the pastor who's been preaching for 30 years. Like, maybe they're in
Oh
different
yeah.
walks of faith, but that doesn't mean that you're
Exactly.
you're any better than anyone else. But through that process, you're constantly learning and you're constantly growing. And being a Christian doesn't mean, bam, flip the
Yes.
switch, I'm perfect now. It means you
Yep.
are constantly growing, and you are constantly
Oh
fighting,
yeah.
and you are constantly learning. And I think that learning to
Mm-hmm.
put your identity in Christ is probably one of the biggest steps, because at that point, like, it's a daily struggle, but you'll notice the world gets to you a little bit less and a little bit
Yep.
less and a little bit less.
Oh, and that's so freeing. And that is just such a sanctification isn't, it doesn't happen at the moment of salvation. That's why
Mm-hmm.
it's called sanctification. It's a learning, walking process because,
Mm-hmm.
we've been going through this book, or I have, and it's called Not a Fan, but a Follower. And it just talks about, so many of us like to be a fan of Jesus. Like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, but
Mm-hmm.
yet I'm going to go live like hell, but I'm still a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And being a follower of Jesus, it's literally picking up your cross every day. And some mornings that cross is going to feel so heavy, but that is the beauty of Christ is he's like, "Hey, look, I've got you." The moment where you feel like you can't carry it anymore, like that's what I'm here for. You're not supposed to carry it alone. And that's such a beautiful thing. One of my favorite songs is I Am Who You Say I Am by Hillsong Worship. And
gosh.
oh my gosh, I love that song. The first part of it always makes me cry. It's like, I am
Mhm.
chosen, not forsaken. I am who
Mhm.
you say I am. And it starts off like, who am I that the highest king would rescue me? And just the thought of, being a Christian isn't following rules. Being a Christian is being rescued. Jesus
Mhm.
rescues. He does
Mhm.
not damn you to hell. The first time you do anything sinful, it's like, oh my gosh, you are on the naughty list. No. We're all imperfect, but He rescues us. And I think that's a
Mhm.
beautiful, until you understand that, you are not going to really be able to find yourself. You're going to be chasing, just like you're talking about, chasing all the little things, the next whims. And I
Mhm.
just think it's a lot of work that you don't have to do. you know, it's like you can find that assurance and that peace in who He says you are. And I just
Mhm.
think that's a really beautiful thing. So, um,
Yeah.
I am so happy. I feel like you have shared so much wisdom today. You are so absolutely the sweetest, and you are so wise. Way beyond your years, I will say. But thank you so much for coming
Oh
today
my
and just
gosh.
really sharing your heart. It means the world to me, and I know our listeners are going to benefit so much. I mean, we hit some amazing subjects.
Oh my gosh, girl, thank you for having me. I am so proud of you and what you're doing. And I just know you
Oh,
just got like this heart for the Lord. And I know that He's going to use that. And I just want to say, like, I love you
oh.
so much. I am so proud
Oh
of
my
you.
gosh, I love you too. Oh my gosh, I love you too. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming today. And guys, thank you for watching the Unfiltered podcast. Best episode in the books. Let's go.
All right.
So make sure to stay tuned next week, as next Friday we will be coming out with something new. But until then, here is Relationships 101 featuring Reagan. And I am so excited to see what she does with the rest of her life because she is an amazing person. And so I'm honored that she spoke with us today. So thank you
Yeah.
guys. I'll see you on the next show. Bye, Reagan. I love you so much.
Bye. Love you too.